Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. We are back on another episode of Daily Palantir, and in today's episode, I want to talk about Palantir's relationship with DOGE, or the Department of Government Efficiency, and kind of get deeper into the concept of Palantir being a beneficiary of the Trump trade. That's what this episode is going to be dedicated to. We're going to talk about it, listen to some clips from Shyam discussing a little bit more about Palantir, this new governmental efficiency situation we've got going on, and also talk about the stock action. Let's get into it. Okay, so before we get into Doge and what is happening with Palantir, and the reason I kind of wanted to talk about it today is because I'm seeing a lot of arguments people are making around Palantir being this Trump trade. The Financial Times came out with this article talking about the Trump trade and Palantir being a key winner. And there's a reason why I do think the street's giving it a premium for Trump's presidency, and it has to do with Doge. So we will talk about that in a second. First of all, price action. 61.36 we ended on the day, 61.44 after hours. Look, here's my thoughts on price action right now, and I think I said this last week as well. This is some of the most resilient price action I've seen from Palantir as I've been covering the stock over the past better part of 4 years now. I mean, we're holding 60s, folks. We're holding 60s. And I know to some people it's starting to get normalized. To me, I would want another at least 6 weeks, end of December. Maybe we're above 60. Maybe we're at like 55, 60. I think kind of this is the range we could be at towards the end of the year. Call it 50 to 63, 64-ish. I think that sort of $14, $15 range is what we're looking at. I don't see it going below 50 by the end of the year. I could be wrong, and I don't see it really going that much above its all-time high at 66 by the end of the year, unless the NASDAQ actually does have the QQQ rebalance Palantir into the ETF by December 20th. That is a possibility. If that's the case, you could get a lot of institutional buying. So the fact that we are holding these $61 levels, I mean, this week we did see a little bit of a nasty decline right here on Monday. So on Monday, we were down from 67.70 in the pre-markets. We were trying to break 66 all the way down to 58.85, which is that even a dip? Not really, in my opinion. Yeah, it's down 10%, but we were up 10% the day before or the weekend before on Friday. So it's like it's just giving back what it got on Friday. And we chill out there for a little bit, and before you know it, we're right back here into this $61 range, down from 67. It is technically a dip, but it's not one of the more juicier dips that's out there or that we've been prone to seeing for Palantir. So the fact that we're holding 61 to me is incredible. This is a $140 billion company. we can't forget about that. And it's just kind of hilarious to me because the amount of vitriol I've seen from people trying to not be able to understand the market cap or to justify the market cap. We've seen a lot of insider selling. Yes, I get it. I've done a long video on insider selling before in the past. I'll link it in the description. But insider selling to me is just one of the things that comes with owning a company, and you have to deal with it. The insider selling is not really tanking the stock, and the negative media out there saying Palantir is the biggest bubble in the world over the weekend last week is what I was kind of seeing from people when it got to 66, 67. That's not really tanking the stock either. So, I mean, the momentum is there. The market appetite is there. NVIDIA crushed earnings yesterday. Stock is whatever, but they showed AI demand is there. And now I think the market has kind of consolidated their beliefs that Palantir is one of the only AI software names on the market that can execute on this opportunity. And that is worth a 50 times price of sales. Is that expensive? Yes, but the market is willing to pay that right now. I think the only way Palantir really falls from here, quite frankly, we have a macro collapse or Palantir misses on earnings. I don't expect them to miss on earnings for the next couple quarters. Macro collapse, I don't know if that'll happen or not. But outside of that, I think it's in Palantir's control to be able to maintain this multiple. And so far, they are maintaining the multiple. All right, let's talk about Doge. So this article came out in the Financial Times, and I thought there were some interesting parts about it that I want to highlight here right now. So this was the title of the article: Palantir becomes a Trump trade as investors bet on higher defense spending. And as you can see right here, Palantir's share price compared to NVIDIA and Lockheed Martin has really taken off. Palantir obviously getting a premium by the market for some of the reasons we just talked about. And here's some quotes from the article that I think are really important when we think about the concept of the Trump trade. Trump is going to be a man on a mission, especially in Israel and Ukraine, said Roger Monteforte, chief executive of Forte Capital Group and a Palantir investor. By the way, he's been a Palantir investor, I think, since like 2011, 2012. So he's been in this name for a very, very long time. Palantir is going to be a pivotal player. He added that the company was one of a trifecta of Trump trades, stocks that stand to gain from their proximity to the new administration, alongside Elon Musk's electric car maker Tesla, which has obviously gone on a great run, and Palmer Luckey's autonomous weapons startup Anduril, a private company whose shares have rocketed in the secondary market trading. A software analyst at D.A. Davidson says Palantir has two levels of alignment with the new administration. Its founders are within the inner circle of influence within the administration, aka Peter Thiel and J.D. Vance. The other alignment is ideological. Palantir has a clear mission to protect Western civilization, and that aligns very well with the philosophy of the incoming administration. Palantir was attacked by advocacy groups over its contract with Immigrations and Customs Enforcement under the previous Trump administration, which accused it of facilitating efforts to deport millions of immigrants from the U.S. and contributing to human rights abuses. The group's recent valuation boom is a result of Thiel and Karp's popularity with an online army of loyal retail investors, mania around artificial intelligence, and accelerating growth while improving profit margins over the past year. I agree with all those things. Obviously, there's a big retail following, but institutional holdings as of last week are 53%. You cannot just say this is majority retail anymore. It's not. Retail, like, we need to get it out of people's heads. Retail did not add $50 billion to the stock in 3 months. And if you think that's the case, you don't understand Palantir. That's just that retail does not have enough money to do that. Palantir is not as much of a household name as people think it is compared to Amazon, Tesla, Nvidia to have that much money out there to do that. And we see it in the numbers. Institutional holdings went from 44 to 53. Obviously, after S&P inclusion, the tooths got in as well. And I love how these media companies try to say, well, it's because of retail. It's like, no, like a quick Google search shows you that it's also because the big guys are seeing value that retail saw at $6, but it's not only because of retail investors. Karp, who has a doctorate in neoclassical social theory, has also become known for such forums for ideological proclamations about patriotism, society, and technology. And then it kind of goes on to just say that Trump is very sort of keen and focused on making sure America is the defense winner and America has the momentum to be able to not lose when it comes to AI abroad and defense spending globally. That's kind of the core thesis of the article. I'll put the article in the chat as well. So let's break this down a little bit. Palantir is a company that says we want to protect the West and we want to actually stand up for something. And they've taken very strong ideological stances with Ukraine, Israel. You can either agree or disagree, but they aren't sugarcoating what they believe in. And, you know, most companies that are afraid to take political stances, they end up, just not saying anything. And they're because they're afraid of people selling off the stock or not buying the stock. Palantir's like, we don't care, And as a result, that has worked over the past couple of years of them just not caring and the stock still being able to have a market for it. So when you think of the Trump administration and when you think of what's happening with DOGE, Elon is on a mission, along with Vivek, to actually expose what is happening in our government. And the simple logic and the theory of DOGE is pretty simple. Let's cut wasteful government spend. Okay, if we have to cut wasteful government spend, then hold on a second. One of the easiest ways to get an ROI on government spend without actually spending ridiculous amounts of money on stuff that doesn't matter is to use software. It's pretty simple. Why do we have 5,000 people working in this agency doing this thing? Why can't we have 150 people have an operating system, a piece of software, a platform, kind of sounding like Palantir right here, that can actually automate, do a lot of the stuff, aggregate the data, yada, 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 yada. I'm speaking very kind of high theory here and speaking kind of off the top of my head, but that's the sort of general thesis that I think the market is thinking of when it comes to Palantir is like, wait a second, we don't know what DOGE is going to do. We don't know what they're going to cut. We don't know what software solutions they're going to implement, but we know that Palantir has a relationship with J.D. Vance. We know Peter Thiel is close with J.D. Vance, co-founder of Palantir. We know Peter Thiel is also close with Donald Trump. And we know that J.D. Vance actually embraces technology. This was a guy who can relate to people who come from a very, very humble background, but he went to Yale Law School, managed venture capital money, so he also understands the other part of the world of actually being able to enable new technologies that can make changes in the world for a lot of the people and for a lot of the populations from where he came from. So you've got someone in the White House who has the ear of the president, who understands technology. That guy is best friends with Peter Thiel. And then you've got software that probably going into the future via AI is the answer to a lot of the questions that we have around government efficiencies. This is what the Department of Government Efficiency tweeted out yesterday on their 2 million follower Twitter account. Federal government agencies are using on average just 12% of the space in their DC headquarters. The Department of Agriculture, with space for more than 7,400 people, averaged 456 workers each day, 6% occupancy. Why are American taxpayer dollars being spent to maintain empty buildings? I love this. I love that we actually have something accountable as an American citizen, like the DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, that is putting out these tweets, opening up people's ideas. And the reason they're able to put out these tweets and really not get it censored is because Elon bought Twitter, to be able to say, hey, why are we spending so much leasing this building and spending taxpayer dollars on this, but only 6% of the agency's employees actually show up to work, actually use this office? Wait a second, do we need the other 94% of these people? What's going on here? And then so that's the first premise of like how Doge interacts with all these different agencies that we potentially need to revolutionize or modernize. And then the second order derivative of that question is, if we can get rid of these people, can we use software to automate and replace what they've been doing? Can we use AI to create agentic workflows that can really change the nature of this stuff? Can we actually have real-time data in the Bureau of Labor Statistics so we don't have to do job revisions every single month and act like one of the most modern, developed countries in the world can't count the amount of jobs that we have every month? Like, can we take this a step further? When you think from first principles, and I think about Elon Musk, which, by the way, he followed Peter Thiel the other day on Twitter. Now, Peter Thiel doesn't tweet or anything like that, but yeah, I mean, why is Elon following his old buddy that built PayPal with him? Well, maybe he's thinking in the back of his head, hey, I think Palantir can probably solve a lot of these problems, and I just want to solve them. So here you go, Palantir. Maybe there's some things that you can resolve. I know I'm kind of speaking in high level right here, high theory, and maybe this is wrong, maybe this is true, but over the next few years, we are going to see a change paradigmatically in how Elon Musk gets the world to think about the government and about how efficient we are with our spending. And Trump is behind his side, giving him the freedom and liberty to do that. If that's the case, and Elon wants to look good, meaning Elon wants to solve these problems and Elon wants to be seen as a winner when it comes to actually resolving these issues, I think there's no animosity here. I don't think there's any antagonistic relationship here. I know he's not best friends with Peter Thiel anymore, but I think he is going to try to pick the best software vendors that can resolve some of the issues that we have currently in the government. And I could be totally off here, and he's not worried about software, and he's just worried about firing people and stuff like that. But logically, when you fire that many people, the job still has to get done. And if only 6% out of the 100% of workers in the Department of Agriculture can't solve the problem, and they need help via software, then whether it's a Salesforce, a CRM, a Datadog, a Snowflake, a Palantir, which is kind of my bet right now, I think there's going to be some software, maybe Amazon, Microsoft, etc. Some software providers are going to be called up to say, hey, can you fix this problem? Can we give you guys $200 million, and for the next 10 years, next 5 years, you resolve this. You make this work. We don't want to have to worry about it. We don't want to have to hire 10,000 people to solve this. Can you bring your best 30 engineers into this agency for the next 2 years and actually set up an operating system to set it up for the next decade? I think there's a real shot that's what Elon is thinking. And if there's a real shot that that's what Elon's thinking, then I think that also explains why the market opportunity currently exists for Palantir. Now, obviously, all of us, pretty much, if you're watching the channel, are bullish Palantir, and we've always recognized this market opportunity. But the premium that the market is giving to Palantir right now, it's 61.36, 50 times price to sales. I cannot believe that is just for their commercial growth. I cannot believe that's just because their net dollar retention is back to 118%. I can't believe that's because adjusted operating margins are closing in on 40%. I have to believe in something external. And the two external things I'm believing in right now are AI as a broader thematic unlocking trillions of dollars in the enterprise space, which Palantir will be a leader on. And two is government revenue continuing to be very sticky. And if that acceleration of government revenue, which went from 6% in January to now 40% growth year over year as per the last quarter, continues to occur and has this massive tailwind of J.D. Vance being in the White House, which Peter Thiel gave him a lot of money to get elected as a senator in Ohio, and then financed his ability to manage venture capital and get all of that experience, is in his here saying, hey, like, I know you guys are trying to clean stuff up at Palantir. We do a lot of this stuff, and J.D. Vance already knows Palantir does a lot of this stuff, so it's a very easy discussion. It's hard for, I think, the market to deny that ideologically Palantir is aligned with the Trump administration in the context of protecting values, and Palantir is aligned in terms of actually being efficient, saving money. That's why CARP doesn't charge clients any money until they show the value. You can use AIP for free for many, many months before you actually have to pay $1 and sign the bill, because Palantir cares about transformational value. If that energy, that momentum comes to the government space, this could be a massive tailwind for Palantir and also explain how the stock is getting this current premium. All right, so final thing for today, we had Shyam actually talk for a couple minutes today about Doge and how Palantir is operating in the government. I'm going to play that clip right here. Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. Let me know what you think in the comments about Palantir, Doge, if this is a tailwind for the company, if you think this is true, this is false, and what you think it means in the context of the premium that the stock is getting right now. Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. Here's Shyam Sanker.
Do you, as a company, Palantir has made a commitment to working with Western allies. Talk about what that looks like, and I mean, it's obvious why that's very important, but talk a little bit about that.
Well, we believe in the West. It's like it's very depressing to see that only 27% of American youth believe in American exceptionalism. And as someone whose family fled great violence in Nigeria to settle in the U.S., I was raised with the visceral understanding of the counterfactual. But for the grace of this nation, I'd be dead in a ditch. So I don't know. I think we can also look back at history and say that there are these periods of nihilism. Like I was reading that George Lucas, he made American Graffiti because he was so tired of this sort of pessimism that had set into the American society. We're so bad. Look how we screwed up the world, kind of exiting Vietnam. And I really think that media narrative set the wave of the roaring 80s that we had here. And I think hopefully we're close to bottoming this out.
Talk about, okay, so we always say on Capitol Hill, and I think this is true at the Pentagon, and it's true in any government entity, people are policy, right? No matter where you are. I mean, even in companies, right? You get the right people,
Absolutely.
They're going to make the right decisions.
I might just to double click on that. I think we've forgotten that in a profound way. Like we call it the F-16, but maybe we should call it John Boyd's plane. Admiral Rickover served for 30 years as the head of naval reactors. Kelly Johnson, you wouldn't have the U-2 or the SR-71 without him. So there's a great way in which I think the person is the program.
Yeah.
And a big part of one of the points in the theses here is we kind of have moved around with DOPMA and how we think about our joint force, and coming out of Goldwater Nichols, it's like you've ended up accreting a series of experiences. It's almost like you're filling out a bingo card, but you haven't had enough focus and attention to compound on what you've learned, both what goes wrong and what goes right. I've been at Palantir 19 years. I've learned more from the things I've screwed up, which are enormous, than I have from the things that have gone well. And I think that is the asset that I continue to compound going forward. We need that in our weapon systems in the direction that we're taking for the technology that we have.
Where does that, and I'm going to zoom in on this for a second, but where does that kind of fall apart? I mean, how much resistance, any institution, any big institution like the Pentagon, Congress, any large scale institution has scar tissue and resistance to change. I mean, how hard is it to break that and to get things moving?
Well, I think this is maybe one of the fundamental issues, which is everyone's looking for an enduring solution to fix acquisition or an enduring solution to fix the system. What if there are no enduring solutions? What
Just
if
case by case?
Yeah, there are problems that can be solved, right, and there are problems that can be managed, and you need great leadership to manage this problem every single day. So I think you got to get the right people on the problem. That it starts there. The second part with defense acquisition is just understanding that the problem is structural. You have to manage it because the department is a monopsony. And I think the monopsony, everyone knows monopoly, where there's one seller. Monopsony is when there's one buyer of a thing. Imagine if you, as the sole buyer, had to conceive of the iPhone and write the requirements and then tell Apple. It's not, it's like at some fundamental level, you either believe in the free market or you don't. And, I like to quip that the Chinese and the Russians, everyone has given up on communism except for Cuba and the DOD. We have 5-year centralized plans.
I'm going to use that, actually. That's a good one.
And I mean, general officers chuckle at that very heartily because they're like caught in the system. They're forced to conform to this very centralized, centrally unplanned, you might say, process.
Yeah.
And we're not better commies than the commies.
That's a really good line. AI is something that Congress, amazingly, is just beginning to wrap its head around in the commercial space, and in the defense sector and the government space. But talk about AI and its role in defense, and its role and now and in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years in the future.
I think to cheapen AI for a second, because there's so much hype about it, I think a useful mental model is AI is software that works.
Yep.
It's some very
advanced software that works.
Yeah. So if you start thinking about that, maybe like by reducing the exoticism, we can see the utility. And the utility is it's going to allow you to make decisions faster. It is the OODA loop. It is how do I get decision advantage on my adversary? How do I see further around the corners than they can see? How do I put effects on them? And as a consequence, create the deterrence that's necessary so that they don't want today is not the day. And so I think very obviously where the energy is gone is employing this stuff to things that are time sensitive. How do I speed up the kill chain by doing this? But we've also had great success at doing it in what you might traditionally consider back office functions in government, like machine-assisted disclosure. So if you're taking the foreign disclosure process, how do I share intelligence with allies, where I need to take the intelligence we have, rewrite it in a way that's releasable? Well, you have this security classification guide that tells you how to rewrite these things. You have the raw intelligence. Historically, you've had humans bleeding from their eyeballs trying to read the guide, rewrite these things. It takes days to get the intel out. It's almost irrelevant by the time you get it out to your allies. Well, the AI can do that in minutes, and that has a clear consequence. So people aren't doing it because they want cost savings. They want decision advantage. But I think it's very broad. We have more civilians in the Department of Defense than we do have uniformed service members. We have more contracting officers than there are Marines. So there's clearly an opportunity here to use this to make us go faster, and as a consequence, be able to reallocate resource to the tooth and away from the tail.
So we're going to wrap in a second. I have to ask you one question before we wrap up, which is there's a lot of people watching who are involved in Congress and involved in government, and people who are watching the live stream who are involved in the Pentagon and Congress as well. Give your elevator pitch about what you want people to take away from this conversation. Which has been fascinating, by the way.
I think one of the things, particularly when it comes to Congress, we need to put more emphasis on the cash chain, not the kill chain. Our ability to move money around to resources. If technology is making everything go faster in the world, you can't have a 2-year POM process. You can't have a 5-year FIDIP. Or you can have those things, but you have to understand, according to military doctrine, that plans are useless, even if planning is invaluable. So let's agree that budgeting is invaluable, but the only thing you can know about any given budget is that it's wrong. So how do we create the necessary continuous integration of this so that we can move money around to the things that really matter? I think there are great ideas around this, going to capability elements instead of program elements, giving more discretion to the uniformed service members. I'm tired of this shibboleth of, we deserve all this oversight because we've shown we're not good at spending the American taxpayers' money. That's not how innovation works. Innovation is chaotic and messy, and if you try to institute processes that make sure that nothing goes wrong, the consequence, you can't lop off one end of the distribution without lopping off the other. It will ensure that nothing goes right. So we're locked into a system where we just are guaranteed mediocrity.
We have to leave it there. Shyam, thank you so much for your time. We are out of time. A big thank you to Congressman Womack and his team for making this morning possible, and for Palantir for partnering with us to make this conversation possible. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, man. That was great. Thank you.
Thank you.